Hi guys, good morning. Welcome to another lesson, and for today we will be talking about evaluating sources. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to identify the features of valid sources, determine the purpose of evaluating sources, identify sources that are acceptable and not acceptable in academic writing, and locate sources effectively. While there is a wealth of information found in various sources, electronically or non-electronically, you should also keep in mind that not all these pieces of information are accurate, relevant, useful, credible, and valid. Hence, it is important to evaluate sources of information that you plan to include in your writing, especially in academic writing. Now, let's go and proceed to the criteria in evaluating sources. There is always a risk that the sources from the internet or anywhere else have biased or incorrect information. So you always have to evaluate and filter your sources before using them. Not only does an incorrect source of information affect you as a researcher, but also it affects your credibility as a writer. So now we will be discussing the following criteria for assessing whether a source is suitable to use for academic purposes. So the criteria include relevance, authority, currency, contents, and location of sources. First, let's talk about the relevance or relevance of the source to the topic research. Here, it is important to assess how well does the source support your topic. So in order for you to know it, it is important to check the title of the text or book, check the table of contents, introduction, summary, abstract, or headings of the text to have a sense of its content. You should locate the information that you need. So if you saw the topics on the table of contents, if you saw some terms that is somehow related to your writing, then this could be a possible source that you can use in your writing. In order for us to check for relevance, let us try to answer this question. Which of the sources would you pick if you are doing a research on the law of supply and demand? A. An introduction to theories on economics. B. How to invest and get rich. Or C. 105 habits of highly effective businessmen. Right, so in here you evaluate where you can look for the law of supply and demand. If your answer is letter A, you are correct. An introduction to theories on economics. Second, let's talk about the authority or the author's qualifications. So in this criteria, it is important for you to check if the name of the author is being identified on the text, on the article, or in the textbook. And also check if the author's background, education is being indicated on that specific source. Also assess if the author has a relative training about the topic so that you know if this author is credible enough to write something about that specific area or field. Check if the author is a professor or instructor from a reputable university. And also check for the contact information of the author if it is available. Alright, so if the source doesn't have an author, think twice before using this information. Or if the author indicated that he is a professor in a specific university, better do a background check by simply looking at the university's website to make sure that that professor is associated with that university. Publications from professors are usually peer-reviewed and have undergone a strenuous publication process, so therefore it is reliable. And also take note that legitimate academic text must include citations as requirement for publication. If there are citations on the work, it is an indication that the writer or the author has thoroughly researched the topic and is not plagiarizing the material. Now it's time to check for author's qualifications. Which of the following texts would you use for a research regarding to Holocaust? A. Dark Shadows of the Past, a comparative study on the Holocaust and the Death March, authored by Mau Guevara, PhD in History. Letter B, Analyzing Nazism and Extremist Supremacy, authored by Adolf Mussolini, RMD. Holocaust has something to do with the history, and on the choices, Mau Guevara has a degree in history, so you should look for the author if he has an expertise with that specific field. So since Guevara has a doctorate degree in history, therefore he is the credible author to check about the Holocaust. Now let's talk about the currency and the publication date. On this criteria, it is important to check the date of the publication. In most fields, the data from older publications may no longer valid. So as much as possible, check for the most recent years. The date of the publication should be at most 5 years earlier. Now let's check for currency. Which material will you use for research on electromagnetism? A. Notes on recent researches in electricity and magnetism, 1853. B. Basics of Electromagnetism, 2015. C. Foundation of Studies in Electromagnetism, 2009. Or D. Fundamentals of Physics, 2013. If your answer is B, you are correct. Among the choices, letter B has the most recent publication date, which is 2015. Now let's proceed to the fourth criteria, which is contents or accuracy of the information. So in this criteria, it is important to check if there are a lot of citation in his or her text. You can check if there is bibliography of works cited on the section. So if there is, you can use it. Check the tone and the author's writing style. So observe formality on every text that you are going to read. Ask yourself if the information is accurate or inaccurate. Check if the information is obviously biased or prejudiced. It is important to take note of the tone and writing style of the author. It must be formal. There should be no words or phrases such as colloquial expressions, jargons, and any contracted words. These terms or phrases is not acceptable in English formal writing. Under this, make sure to verify your findings with multiple sources. And last, of course, make sure that the author has no bias or personal agenda about the topic or about the information that he has written. Let's try to check for accuracy. Which of these sources would you use for a research on Marxism? A. The Dark Side of Marxism, hence C. B. Karl Marx and the Fundamentals of Marxism by Fred Engel. C. Effects of Marxism in an Industrialized World, Rick Carles. Obviously, the answers here are both B and C. But you may also use A as long as you can balance this with other sources. Because in letter A, it only shows about the dark side of Marxism. Lastly, we have location of sources. In here, it is important to identify where is the source published. Is it published digitally or in print? Also, check if it provides complete publication information such as authors, editors, title, date of publications, and publisher. Also, in here, it is important to check what is the URL used of the website. Avoid using information from personal blogs, Wikipedia, Wiktionary, and Wikicodes. You should only consider URL that has the top-level domains such as .edu. .edu means that it is published in a reputable by an academic institution such as university. Also, we have other common URLs that you can use aside from .edu. We have .gov for governments, .org for organizations, .com for commercial sites, .net for network infrastructure. So in academic writing, reputable sites are those with .edu, .com, .org, .net, and .gov. Those are the reputable sites that you can use in writing your research. So there you have it, the different criteria in evaluating sources, and I hope guys that you have learned something for today's lesson.